Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Savvy Surgical Technologist. I'm your host, John Budd. Guys, I'm so excited to have everybody back. I know I've been off for a little bit, but I also always tell you guys mental health is very, very important and scheduling is very important. But I needed the time off because I do a lot. So every now and then I'll take a few weeks off to get my mind right. But I'm excited to bring on my guest, Dr. Tonya Wright. She is an amazing person, and I've known her for many years. We worked together at Pennsylvania Hospital. We did some great cases in the basement down there. She's a wonderful MD and an advocate for for all health, but in particular, we're going to talk about Black health today, Black women's health today. I'm going to introduce, I'm going to bring her on, and then I'm going to talk about her a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into the question and answer session. So, Tanya, tell us a little bit about yourself and your passions and whatever you'd like to talk about with us today.
John, I'm so happy to be here. We've been trying to do this for a little while. I'm honored. And I'm glad to know that you took some time for yourself to rest and that you're coming back out with me as your first guest for a little bit of a break. Yes, a little bit about me. I think a lot of people don't really realize, but I was actually born on an island called Anguilla in the Caribbean. I left there in my late teens, moved to Canada, a small town called Peterborough, Ontario, where I did my undergrad. I did a biochemistry molecular biology degree at Trent University, very small school, but it was an amazing opportunity to get my first start towards my dream of becoming a doctor. I left Trent. I applied broadly in the US and to Canadian medical schools because of my not being a citizen. It was really like an uphill battle to decide where I would go, where I'd be accepted. And so fortunately for me, I got accepted to Penn State College of Medicine in Hershey. So that's where my Penn State journey actually started. Um, I met my now husband there at Penn State, who was pursuing his MD PhD and ultimately became a radiation oncologist. I finished up my Penn State College of Medicine in 2011. And that's where my Pennsylvania hospital journey started. I knew I wanted to be an OB-GYN. I came to the US knowing that I wanted to be an OB-GYN. We'll talk about where that dream came from a little bit later. But essentially, when I interviewed at Pennsylvania Hospital, I knew that that was the place that I wanted to train. There was no question in my mind. I had an exceptional interview experience. I felt very drawn to that hospital system, but also the community and what they were offering. Particularly, there are opportunities for global health. And so I ranked them my number one choice. And I was so blessed and honored to have been selected to do my 4 years of training for obstetrics and gynecology there. That's where our journey began together, John. From Pennsylvania Hospital, completed my residency. I graduated as a generalist obstetrician, which means that I didn't go on to do any further fellowship or subspecialization. Um, and got married to Atu, my husband, that summer, 2015, and began the craziest journey of our lives because his job took him to New Orleans for his first job out of residency. I said, I'm coming along for the ride because, you know, we're going to be in the same place at this point. So we road tripped down from Philly. I collected all my stuff, picked him up in North Carolina because he was doing his residency at Duke, and we got that U-Haul van down to Louisiana, and the rest is history. So yeah, that road trip down to Louisiana truly is like the time that just solidified like the beginning of our lives together. Um, we stayed in New Orleans. I worked with the Tulane Health System. We stayed in New Orleans for about 2.5 years. We had our first son, uh, Deuce. We call him Deuce because he's at two, like my husband. And we pretty much knew that we needed to head back to the Northeast for some family support. And so we tried to find the right jobs for us and headed back to the Northeast. And that's where I ended up at Penn State yet again, kind of in a full circle moment, and had been at Penn State for 8 years actually, working as a full scope generalist, doing a lot in the medical student education space. I also had a specialty clinic for young women and girls with bleeding disorders there, and that sort of became my niche. Of course, advocating for Black maternal health was something that really blossomed in my time there as well. Since then, have had two additional baby boys. Now we have three children, three sons. And just recently, John, we moved from Pennsylvania down into the DC area. And so that's where we've been for the past 3 months. So very big change. I was just telling John, actually, the house that we bought is a renovation project. So there are contractors downstairs right now cutting and nailing and so on. So I'm hiding in my son's room to be able to have this wonderful conversation with John. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh man, I'm so excited and thank you for all that background. You know, it's funny, I didn't know you guys went to New Orleans. I remember, I knew when you went to Hershey, and I've been following you and following your career and your relationship from Hershey. I didn't know you guys were in NOLA. I was just in NOLA last year at Ochsner, working for them a little bit. So, you know, I've traveled for the last 8 years or whatever. I've just settled down at Rady's in San Diego, where I'm at today.
Okay.
But all information is so exciting, man, because it really gives us the background on where it all started. And I always like to be authentic, and I like to go back in time. I always say we have to go back in time. We have to check the links of our lives, because if we check the links of our lives, we'll know why we are exactly where we are today. And that's how we'll build our foundations, and that's how we'll build our lives going forward. So thank you for all of that. And you know, it's funny because talking about Pennsylvania Hospital and how we met and how we used to do surgeries down in the basement with Amanda Shepard and all those guys and stuff like that. And I hopefully shout out to Amanda. I hope to get her on the show one day as well. But I remember all the great times that we had in the basement, and just how kind you were, and your light. You always had this wonderful light about you. And one of the funny things I wanted to tell this story before we jump into our question and answer session is, I remember, was labor and delivery on the second floor or the third floor at Pensy? I think it was on the second floor.
Second. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I remember I was working overtime because, you know, I was in the main OR, but I was working overtime on the labor floor there, which was the second busiest labor room in the state of Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
behind Abington, and I
Mm-hmm.
worked at both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Zoos, complete
Yep.
zoos. So great places to learn.
Yep.
I remember I was leaving out one night, and I was walking down that long hallway. It was at night, and it was dark, and it was like, if anybody knows anything about Pennsylvania Hospital, it's the first hospital in America,
Yeah.
and it has ghosts.
Yeah.
People don't. I am not lying. It has ghosts in that joint. So you go into certain areas, you're gonna be scared. But anyway, I was walking down the hallway, and it's this elevator. You go through these double doors, and it's this little elevator
Mm-hmm.
that goes down into the lobby. But it's an out of the way elevator that a lot of people don't even know about. And you were coming from the other direction. And I remember I seen you, and I said, you had a look on your face like you were very deep in thought, or it was something going on. And I said, hey, what's wrong? We got on the elevator, and you was like, and I don't know if you're going to remember this,
No.
but you was like, it was crazy. You was like, my ex just called me, or my ex just called me, and he's wanting to reconcile. He wants us to get back together. And I don't know if that's the exact words you said. And I said, well, what's wrong? I said, why are you thinking about it so hard? You was like, I'm really not sure. I do want to, something along those lines. Like, I want to talk to him, but I'm not sure what's going on or whatever. And I said, well, you should just, you should just call him and talk to him and see where it go at. 3 kids later, you're married to this guy, and I'm going to have Deuce the Dude on our show one day, too, to talk about your journey. Do you remember that?
Oh,
Yeah.
that
Do
is.
you remember that? Did he ever call you?
Yes,
Like
yes, that actually fits. That tracks 1,000%. Because when we left medical school, it was sort of a crossroads in a relationship, because I was going to Pennsylvania, he was in Durham area for Duke, and it's like, how is this going to even work? So we actually separated for a time point, and everyone that knew us always said, "You guys are going to get back together. You guys are," and I'm like, absolutely not, no way, it's not going to work. And it was just literally when we around that time, I assume we decided we're going to do this. We were engaged like 6 months later. It just made sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, Atu and I are soulmates. There's no one else in this universe that could fulfill that void in my life. We are very different, but yet we're two peas in a pod. He's my yin to my yang. He gets me, we get each other. It's what makes it really a lot of fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not easy. Certainly, it's not. This is not fantasy. Like there are bumps along the road, obviously, but it's been an amazing ride, and I'm so glad I got that advice from you and took that chance.
I'm you. We was on a low behind elevator, and I said, "Well, why don't you just talk to him?" And then I remember a few months later, I start seeing him on your timelines and stuff like that, and I'm like, "This guy is so cool." Guys, when I bring this man on, you're gonna see how sharp he is and how cool he is. He just has this and I've never met him personally, but I admire him from a distance. Just his style, the way he carries himself, and the obvious love that he has for you and that you have for him. And I always say that it's certain people that I look up to in terms of relationship that I admire, and I hope to have that for myself one day. Like to have somebody who, like you said, is a yang to my yang and stuff like that. And you guys are such a beautiful couple. So we're going to spend the block for sure and have you and him on. I hope to have him on solo, and then I hope to have you guys on together to talk about your journey, and he could tell it from his point of view and whatever, and we can go from there. But real exciting, and I'm happy that I played a small part in such a beautiful thing.
That story so much, so much.
I knew I was going to get you on that one
I had
because,
no recollection, but it tracked. It definitely tracked.
yeah,
And it worked.
yeah.
Everything absolutely worked out for good. At two, and honestly, I would not be who I am in this healthcare space if it were not for him. He's literally always my cheerleader. When I'm fearful of doing something, I do things with fear all the time. And I listened to one of your podcasts talk about this um, previously. But I'm a very nervous person. People see me and they think that I have a lot of confidence and I am, but I do it with a lot of fear inside of me, and having a two support, always saying, just do it. What's the big deal? What's the worst that could happen? Do it. It's going to impact someone. And just having that perpetual, consistent support, pushing me to do the things that are so scary. So I wouldn't have accomplished many of the things that I have if I did not have the support. And that's the honest goodness truth.
And that's just so beautiful, and I love those. I love that for you. I love that for you guys, and we need more of that. And that's one of the beauties of going through healthcare. Some of the things that we've learned through healthcare has been a foundational thing to build us up, to help us overcome our fears, and then to have a partner who accentuates that, who pushes you and encourages you and stuff like that. That's just something that's especially in this field, because I always say it, and I said it in previous podcasts, that our field is a taker. It takes, and then it comes back and it takes more. It's never mindful of what we go through. So
Hmm.
to have somebody that you could come home to and talk to, and he can build you up and you can build him up, it's just a beautiful thing to have. And I encourage anybody that's um going through life, going through healthcare, any situation, to find a partner who gets you. And
Hmm.
that's how you build generational wealth. People think wealth is money and stuff like that. Wealth is a small part of generational wealth. Oh, and one more thing I want to talk about before we jump into the question and answer is just real quick, guys. She's upstairs, so she can't show you. We can't see all the art and all the stuff that her and her husband collect. But she's an art enthusiast. Can you just tell me real quick how you guys got into that? Following you on that is just again inspiring. You just have such a beautiful light.
Yeah, thanks, John. And it's all connected to the work that we do, right? We found a way to link it back, our passion. So if we just did medicine and went to work and we were in the trenches, my husband's a radiation oncologist. He's seeing patients that are on the brink of dying or that has chronic pain, or he's really overwhelmed with a lot of things that are very heavy. Let's say that. I get occasional bursts of joy because I deliver babies and it's a beautiful thing. And that too does too. But if we truly were consumed with just the work that we did, it would be a very hard road to go down. And so you got to fill your outside of work with passions and things that you're enthusiastic about. Atu came into the marriage pretty much with a few, things that he had collected art wise, and he comes from a long line of art enthusiasts. His grandfather started one of the first art centers in Ghana. They have artifacts in the family that are hundreds of years old, and so he has always basically been surrounded by art and history. Um, it was something that was newer to me, and so when we moved to New Orleans. we had an opportunity to visit a home of a lovely individual, CCH Pounder. She's become a very dear friend and mentor to us, who had a very large art collection in her home. And just seeing how she lived with art and basically normalized it, not being in a museum. This is a black, strong black woman who has amassed such a wonderful collection of art that tells such amazing stories. And it doesn't have to be in a museum or a gallery. Like, you can actually live with art. And simultaneously, Atu's grandmother had just turned 100. And to commemorate and honor her, I actually had a local New Orleans artist create a piece of artwork in her image. And so that started the collection together about 11 or 12 years ago. And it's just grown ever since. We've really tried to push the art for the African diaspora, specifically trying to inspire other collectors like ourselves that look like us, um, developing that comfort of walking into a gallery and saying, who is this by, or who created this, or talking to artists about their practice, just kind of normalizing it. It could otherwise be such an intimidating experience. And so during COVID, so we've grown our collection quietly over years, but during COVID, I had the idea to show our art collection on social media, the Wright Art Collection. And that's where it really just kind of took off, and people were like, "Oh, this is something that they're doing," and we've used it for advocacy as well. We've done exhibitions in our home to raise funds for Black maternal health, to raise funds for the African Millennial Foundation, and to raise funds for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So we've used art in a very philanthropic way. It's been the reason we were able to start an endowment at Penn State, my previous institution, that is specific for Black maternal health. And they use those funds to be able to do research, to fund any small projects. Right now, it's really taking care of our Black Maternal Health Week, which happens every year between April 11th and April 17th. And so, it's part of things that we enjoy, but it also connects back to the healthcare space and the things that we're passionate about. And it gives us an escape outside of medicine. So yes, the Right Art Collection. If anybody wants to follow, they can kind of see. It's been a little bit on pause right now as we're kind of getting our house settled, and moving our art from Pennsylvania to the DC area was quite an undertaking, but it is here. Some of them are still wrapped in plastic, but hopefully in due time, we'll be able to start photographing again in our new space.
That's was just wonderful, and just how you connected it to healthcare and Black health and stuff like that, man. It's just inspiring, and like I said, I've told you this for years, how much I admire you and how much your light always shines in this world, and just telling me all of this stuff. So, like I said, the history of things matter, man. And you telling me that, and filling us in on how it all started is beautiful. And you got my nephew, a piece of art from my nephew, which I always touches my heart because I know that he's a part of such a wonderful collection. And again, I had a small part in introducing you guys. Just wonderful, man. And we definitely got to continue and have a little series and a podcast as I grow this podcast and try to make it a national thing. And I hope that you'll help me along in this journey, and you can talk about all your wonderful things. But let's jump into what we're here for. So my first question to you, and again, guys, I'm gonna take a question from my followers at the end, but I really want to dive into what we're going to talk about today. Um, so my first question for you is: Black women in the United States are dying during and after childbirth at a significantly higher rate than any other demographic. What sparked your personal passion to confront this crisis, and what have you seen firsthand that the public may not fully understand about why this disparity exists?
Yeah, John, thanks so much for that question. So like I said, I grew up on an island in the Caribbean, only about 12,000 people actually on that island when I left. And there was a significant need for OB/GYN providers to come back and take care of the population. So when I got to my training, I obviously married a two. I had profound guilt for not going back, actually. Um, and I felt that, what could I felt there was a part of me that was a little bit unfulfilled in terms of not going back to serve my country. And I found ways to fill that gap ultimately. But essentially, I started kind of looking around, especially in Philly, New Orleans. I'm like, people need me here too. Like there's a crisis in this country that I can actually have a significant impact on. And I think that that helped to rectify a lot of the guilt that I had for not returning to Angola and using my talents in different ways. Um, and I couldn't help but be confronted with the reality of the crisis. You know, I'm practicing in inner city Philadelphia, New Orleans. It became very obvious that there was a critical issue. And so it was a natural draw, honestly, to just try to do something to make it in. I will say by now, people have recognized that there is a crisis that specifically impacts Black women. We've seen the statistics. Social media has helped a ton to put the word out there that Black women are at a 2 to 3 times increased risk, depending on the statistics, of dying in and around childbirth than white women, for example, and even Hispanic women. And a lot of times people are like, why is that? It's such a multi-layered question. Um, but we do know that at the core of it is racism, stereotypes, implicit bias. Black women are truly not treated in the same way that white women are. And sometimes it is implicit, meaning that they are not the faculty and staff, the nurses, the team, the physicians are not overtly being racist or intentionally being racist, but it is set in such a history of stereotypes that you can't shake it off. One of those examples I'll give you would be I asked a group of medical students not long ago. I forget the year, but it wasn't maybe in the last 10 to 15 years. They did a survey and they asked medical students if they thought that Black women had thicker skin than white women. And the great majority of those students actually thought that Black women had thicker skin, which translated to the fact that they could not feel pain the way that white women did. Okay. And so these individuals were medical students then, so they're out in the world practicing medicine now. These are your family's physicians who have that mindset that we have to slowly undo that. Where would that come from? That is grounded in history, right? Of this stereotype. And so people carry these biases into the care that they provide women. Black women are more likely to not be taken seriously when they come forward with a complaint. How often have we heard the story of, oh, I came in with shortness of breath and chest pain, and they were chucked it up to anxiety. The patient's anxious. No, it may have some component of anxiety, but at the core, there are objective things that you can do to evaluate this patient for cardiomyopathy, which is the number one cause of death in Black women, heart failure after delivery. We have to consider these things. Oh, her blood pressure is elevated, but she's worked up. Well, perhaps her blood pressure is elevated because truly she has preeclampsia and we need to do the things to prevent her from having a seizure or stroke and not just chucking it up to something that you think is a reasonable explanation. Those reasonable explanations are very dangerous, and those are the reasons why we see this disparity. The list could go on. You know, I hate to victim blame. This is not at all victim blaming, but because we know that there are these stereotypes, we do have to arm ourselves with the information and with the tools to help to prevent these things from happening to us. So that if you know that you're being accused of being anxious, you can, in a very respectful way, say, I do believe that there's something inherently wrong that needs to be evaluated, that needs to be worked up. I may have anxiety, but that is not. You have to be able to advocate for yourself. And it's a shame that that's what it comes down to. But this is why we have to have conversations like this so that Black women know the things that they need to advocate for.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because, like I said, I worked in labor and delivery. That's actually where I started at Abington. And then, you know, I moved on to Pennsylvania Hospital. But, you know, I think one of the big issues, and this is a societal issue, I always say that healthcare is a microcosm of what goes on in society as a whole. It must be very, very uncomfortable as a Black woman to go into a place to get healthcare and be surrounded by people who don't look like her. And it's not like we say that they're inherently racist, that they're blatantly racist or anything like that. And we're not here to bash anybody. We're just trying to bring some awareness to the fact that sometimes Black women they're either looked at as way too strong or way too weak. It's never just saying, taking her at face value and saying she's not feeling well or she's going through something. They always have to put a caveat on something like, oh, well, she came in extra hype, or it's always a little something going on behind the scenes and I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that we're being taken care of by people who don't understand us culturally.
Yeah.
And
It's supported by literature. There have been scientific papers that have shown us that Black women are more likely to get better care when they are taken care of by a race concordant, or what that means is by other Black physicians. That is proven in science. And so you're right. We have to look at it from like a grassroots level from the very beginning. Where are the Black doctors coming from? The number of Black doctors in this country has really like plateaued. Only 2% of OB-GYNs are Black women, 2%. So, and that number is not elevating at a rapid rate, even though we really need to. So how do we change that narrative? Well, you can't be what you can't see. I say that all the time. I sign up for career days. I do the community baby showers. I have had patients tell me that I'm the first Black doctor they've ever had, which is insane in 2026. How is that even possible? I recently joined an institution in DC, and I could say it's Washington Hospital Center. And I jokingly tell people, I feel like I'm in Wakanda, because I look around and there are the most amazing and skilled Black physicians every turn. The majority of my patients are Black, um, are mostly Black, and it just feels great to actually make an impact. And it feels great to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. That being said, I have heard people say to me, actually, I had terrible experiences with my Black doctor. I had awesome experiences with my Black. It has very little to do with race and more to do with intention and addressing the elephant in the room. If you have a doctor that recognizes the issue and addresses the issue in the room, I think that that's fantastic. We couldn't ask for more. You really just need a physician who is an advocate, who has the awareness, who goes above and beyond to make sure that you are safe, essentially.
yes, and I think that's very important to note, because again, we're not blatantly saying that stuff is racist or racism, that it comes from a place of racism. But the facts are, we should be taken care of by people who look like us, because it's just a more comfortable thing. It's more, and it's sad that we still live in a society where when you say that, you feel a little uncomfortable for saying it, because it almost feels like it's reverse racism. But at the end of the day, people should be around people. People should be taken care of by people who understand the dynamics of being that kind of person, especially in a society that's steeped in racism. This is not our fault. It's a problem that needs to be recognized and addressed. So, when I'm looking for a healthcare provider, I look for somebody who's Black. I actually look for Black females, which is crazy to me, because I guess because I didn't really have I didn't know my biological father, and my mother, and I always say it on my social media pages that my greatest role models have always been women. So, thank you for that.
That's also scientifically proven that you get better care from female providers. So you're not wrong.
Yeah, and I always feel it's funny, because I got a colonoscopy a couple of weeks ago, and a little while before that, I moved to San Diego, so I went to I got new doctors, and they're both females, and they're very motherly. And it's funny because they're both Indian, so I didn't particularly look for Black women or whatever, but and again, I've used white providers as well. I'm a humanist. I believe humanity over everything. I just know that feel like I'm more comfortable with women, and from any walks of life. So I always feel like I get,
like, patients should be taken care of by people that they trust, and sometimes it means earning their trust, that is culturally competent, who has the awareness, and who listens. So often we hear patients just saying, they didn't listen to me. They don't feel heard. If you listen to the patient, they're telling you what's wrong with them. That is a fundamental principle. We kind of use machines and we treat behind the computer. But if you stand in front of the patient and you listen to what they're saying, they're actually telling you what's wrong with them. So I think at the end of it, race, despite race, what Black women need are patients that are physicians that will listen, that are skilled, that are culturally competent, that have the awareness of the crisis, and who truly will do whatever it takes to keep them safe, honestly.
Yeah, because it comes down to the simple fact that if I'm scared to have this delivery, then I'm more likely to pass away or have a bad experience because I'm afraid. So what I've learned over the years from being in labor and delivery is that the best physicians are the ones who handheld the best, to encourage the patient, to show them love, like, and once that patient sees that they're cared for, not cared for, but cared for, they'll have better results. We'll have better outcomes.
It's
So
one of my most recent interesting experiences actually at Washington Hospital Center. I was taking care of a lovely white woman patient, and she said, when I walked in the room, she said, "Oh, thank God, I've never felt safer than to have a Black woman take care of
mhm.
God." And this is this was like, oh, this is, it was kind of like the Kamala effect. I loved it. It was amazing. And I'm like, I will absolutely not let anything happen to you. I will do my absolute best no matter who you are, because that's the person that I am. But we definitely need more positions like that. Absolutely.
And it's a powerful thing because even as a surgical tech, I've been requested by like top presidents in hospitals to be involved in their mother's cases and stuff. I've done celebrities. Like if I told you guys at Pennsylvania Hospital a couple times too, if I told you their name, this is like a worldwide. They know this person's name where I was requested to do those surgeries, and it's wonderful to be trusted.
Hmm.
So, and the thing is, we can transcend race just by being kind.
Yeah.
We have to understand that kindness is cool and that how we carry ourselves and how we present ourselves is 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 paramount to having a successful life, whether inside healthcare or outside healthcare. So all of that, man, all of that is wonderful, and I appreciate that honest answer, and it really points to where we are and where we need to go. So, and that leads me into my second question for you. Um, which is basically about accountability and what we feel is some of the solutions, which you already kind of touched on. But in your experience as an OBGYN surgeon, what systemic issues, whether clinical, institutional, or societal, contributes most to the higher maternal mortality rates among Black women? And what practical changes do you think we need to address to make this situation better?
Yeah, I think we beat implicit bias to death, so I'll let that be. But certainly that's at the core of it. But I think that there's a lot of distrust. So some of my most challenging patient encounters are actually Black women that are wanting to make sure that I will actually go the extra mile and keep them safe. They're coming already into the system, have a system that is broken, that they've had negative experiences with in the past. And so I think earning the issue with distrust is an age-old one, and it can't be fixed with just one person. We all have to kind of rally together and change the face of healthcare for Black patients. The other thing that I wanted to make a point of, John, is saying that um, we as Black women have to kind of take matters into our own hands as well, right? So we can't shun the system because the system has been bad to us. We do have to show up for prenatal care. We do have to show up for prenatal care early. One of the things that the the disparity is that white women go to clinical care earlier than Black women, right? And I don't fault Black women for staying away because of it's multi-layered. Again, are they staying away because they've had terrible experiences with providers or can't find a provider? Are they staying away because they just don't have access? Where they live has no one that can take care of them. Are they forced to go to like a health center that, they don't want to or they don't feel connected to? And then insurance. We tend to be uninsured and, not insured more than other races. And so again, these are systemic issues, societal issues, access, insurance coverage, um, you know, just trust, mistrust, and presenting to care earlier. And not just presenting to care when you're pregnant, but even before you're pregnant. chronic issues. We're more likely to enter pregnancy with unchecked, unmedicated chronic hypertension, poorly controlled diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
obesity. These are things that have to be addressed before pregnancy, having regular routine preventative services. These are the things that we can control to an extent within a system that has been, negatively affecting us. But these are things that we could try to improve on.
It's funny that you say that because you never want to victim blame, but we also have to be responsible. We have to be accountable, right? Um, so like you say, we come in too late. We have a fear. We don't take care of ourselves in a way that other demographics may take care of themselves. We have to look in the mirror and say, um, did I bring this on to myself in a sense where I didn't follow up on some of the things that I was going experiencing myself. Then I get to the hospital, I get to a health clinic, and things really go left. I don't trust them, but I've already set myself on that path of not getting the care that I need because I didn't care for myself in an adequate
And then,
way.
you have to ask yourself, what were the circumstances that prevented this individual from doing that? Do they not have childcare? Do they live in a neighborhood that doesn't even have a grocery store that has? So I give Black women grace across the board because you don't know the circumstances that are affecting them being able to take care of themselves in the way that you think they should take care of
Hmm.
themselves. I'll never forget, very early in my career, fresh out of residency, I had a patient in New Orleans who kept showing up. She came to her visit, but she was not gaining weight. The baby was growth restricted. And I kept being like, you need to eat. You need to eat more calories. This baby isn't, you are undernourished. Your baby. And then finally, like weeks in, it occurred to me, this lady does not have access to food. What is wrong with you, Tonya? Like this, you didn't even ask her what she has access to. And that complete. And finally, I came right out and I said, tell me what you have for breakfast. What do you have access to? And it was very obvious that she did not have resources. And here I am chastising her week after week after week. And so John, I do think that physicians need to have this approach where you're like, back to the grassroots in a non-judgmental way. Think outside the box. What could be the circumstances that's preventing this person from coming in? What are the circumstances for this lady wanting to leave this hospital against medical advice? This happens. I have a patient that has high blood pressure. We want to recommend things to prevent a seizure, to take care of her preeclampsia. And she is like, I got to leave the hospital. Well, ma'am, if you leave the hospital, you can have a seizure, you can have a stroke. And I go very far in explaining in non-scientific ways why I think it's important for them to stay and be careful. You would be surprised how often this happens where Black women need to leave against medical advice for a variety of reasons. And a lot of it is for fear. They're scared of what's going to happen to them in the hospital system. They feel safer outside, which is a problem. How do we get here? We created this. Or they have childcare. No one's at home. Dad has to go to work. He works two jobs. Grandma, like there are just reasons. And so when you try to figure out the why, I think you have a greater impact and and patients will do better.
Yeah. It's funny that you said how you had to look deeper, how it dawned on you, because you just saying that, it just dawned on me. I never, sometimes we don't look deep enough.
Yeah.
And the fact that you just said that, it really got me a little emotional and like, because it's upsetting to say, like I said, we don't want to victim blame, but maybe we do, right? And because we didn't look deep enough, we didn't ask the right questions and stuff like that. And now that you just said that, it really opened me up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wonderful thing about conversations like this, because it pours a light into a dark corner. I'm in healthcare. I've been in healthcare almost most of my adult life, and I never even thought about that. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like why is she not making it? Why is she not growing? Why doesn't she look as healthy? I've given her everything, but we didn't get into the cultural issues. We didn't dive deep enough.
Yep.
And I'm guilty of that. And now that you've made me aware of that, that's going to be a focus of mine. And I don't know if you know this, but for my store, Sheila's House of Style, I share a portion of everything that I make, whatever I sell. If I sell something for $50, I'll send something to Phil Abundance, the San Diego Food Bank. I'm also involved in stage 4 breast cancer research now because my daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer. she's fine now, and I'm gonna have her on the show too to talk about her journey. But food is very important to me. It's very hurtful for me to sit back and think that someone didn't eat today. That bothers me. And when you pointed out the nutritional thing about the young lady that you was dealing with in New Orleans, it just brought back my desire and my want to give more back in terms of helping to put food on people's table. This should be a never event. People should never be hungry. And not only that, but in the Black communities, I grew up in Philly. I'm very fortunate in my mother. I never went to bed hungry, ever. But I've had friends who came over to the house and my mother fed them. I know people who literally don't eat. So it's very important. And then again, like you say, that impacts their health care, and that impacts some people purposely go to the hospital so they can eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
God, when I had my first son and he would cry because he was hungry, that would gut me, not because I couldn't feed my child, but I would immediately think about the babies and the children in this world that didn't have access. That was something that I had to almost I don't know, and I've heard other mothers talk about this too, where just that connection starts happening where thank God I can provide for these children. And all of that to say that something doesn't have to be your experience for you to, that's why you have to travel. That's why you have to live it. You have to step out of your comfort zone, because you have to see that this is how your life and experiences is not everybody's life and experiences. And if you can't come outside of yourself and think about that, then you are going to be you're oblivious to other people's experiences.
You're oblivious.
My husband is one person that taught me that when we travel, we take the kids all over the world. They'll go anywhere. And he's always like, this is not a place just for people on vacation. People live here. You're going to see how people live here. We're going to go in the community. We're going to, hang out with the best of them, because you're not just coming here acting like a tourist in somebody else. This is where people live, and you're going to experience it. So he has taught me that. And it's so important for children to see that, because it might not be their experience.
Again, another powerful statement, very enlightening, to go around the world and actually experience how other people live. It teaches empathy. It gives us an insight on what other people go through. We have this notion in America, even our poor folks in America, we have this notion that it's all about us.
Yep.
That I'm going here, then I should be catered to, or I'm an American and I'm all these things, even inside Black America, we have this notion that we're entitled when we're not. We need to be more empathetic. We need to understand that there by the grace of God goes I. There's never going to be a day in my life where I don't wake up and I say I want to impact somebody. And that came through the traumas that I've inflicted on my own life through the years of alcoholism or whatever I was struggling with at those times in my life. But I never lost myself so much to know where I didn't always feel like I wanted to give back to this world. Even when I was in the dark, I was always a giver. And I always tell people that I think God put me through the dark to get to meet people in there to say, hey, we're going to find our way out together. So that comes from empathy. That comes from caring about stuff that's bigger than, and when it comes down to nutrition and proper health care and all those things, it's incumbent on us to make an impactful difference, because we have the means. Mm-hmm. Every time I make even when I don't, I got monthly stuff coming out of my own checks and my own stuff, because my store is new. It's not doing that great. So it's never going to be enough for me to say the store is going to fund this. Mm-hmm. I'm funding because I care.
Yeah.
I care. That store don't have to sell nothing.
Yeah.
I'm still going to try to give back, because it's important to me to give back, because I've taken so much. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for that. Again, more enlightenment. You're shining so many lights on to so many dark crevices in our society. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because I knew that you were going to be a powerful presence, and you want to talk about the things that need to be talked about in a way that's not attacking. Because a lot of times we sit on these podcasts, or the media is always negative, is always saying, well, they should do this, or we're all we all have a responsibility to do something to make this world better. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And that brings me up to question number 3 and our final question. And maybe I'll have a bonus question at the end since we're rolling and we're doing so well, and what we're talking about is so powerful and so impactful. But earlier you mentioned that you moved to DC, so I want to, piggyback off of that. So you recently transitioned from Hershey, Pennsylvania to Washington. How does this move position you differently in the fight to reduce maternal mortality among Black women? And how do you see your impact expanding both during childbirth and in postpartum care?
Okay, so thank you for asking. I left Pennsylvania, I was in Central PA. Only about 10 to 15% of my patients were Black. Nonetheless, I had amazing relationships with my patients over the years of all races, all backgrounds. I had an amazing ride there. It was very important for my career. When we made the decision to move to the DC area, it was an opportunity that presented itself for my husband. His family's all in the same county. His parents, his sister, his families are all here. So this was really a no-brainer that we needed to take this opportunity. And so it was a moment for me to stop and think about all the things that I had been doing, and if I wanted to continue those things or how I would pivot. And so I don't think you know this, John, but I made a very big career decision where now I don't practice full scope obstetrics and gynecology. I only do hospitalist work, which means I cover 7 24-hour shifts a month. And I have days off in between to be a mom to my children. I was telling my mom today that I haven't mommed this hard in my life. I'm doing pickup, drop off, school bus, career day, you name it. I am in the trenches. Before we moved here, I had outsourced a lot. People on social media, they're like, oh, you're doing everything. I'm like, I have a lot of help behind the scenes. Here, I am doing it. And it feels so good to be able to do the thing that I love, which is delivering babies and taking care of women in a very finite time period. My 24-hour shift, I come home. I'm just coming off of 5 days. I'm going back tomorrow for a shift, but I had 5 days without a shift. You saw me in the streets. I was actually in Philly this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I seen you. You shot.
Yeah,
I didn't know you was in Philly though.
still gotta live my life, but it has been such a great change for me because when I'm at work, I'm in the trenches. I love it. I give everything to it because I'm coming home with days off to recover. I love the faculty that I work with. The residents are very strong. The patients are amazing. The only thing that I'm missing is those long-term relationships with the patients that I had previously. I don't have an opportunity to grow relationships. I had taken care of aunties and cousins and nieces and all within the family. I could go to a Thanksgiving dinner, there'd be 10 kids running around that part of their care. But here, it's very much like I do my best. I connect with the patient when they're there. I'm in the trenches with them. It's fast paced, it's intense, it's high volume, it's high acuity. It's in the city, so you just never know what's coming in. So it keeps
Mm-hmm.
me, very invigorated. It's thrilling and exciting. But I get to come home in the morning, stand on the bus stop, get the kids on the bus. It's just so much better way of fulfilling both mom and career. That being said, I am amongst so many like-minded individuals who are fighting this good fight with me. When they give statistics monthly in our faculty meetings, they're commenting on disparities. That was something I had never experienced before. It's always the elephant in the room, but here they address it off the bat. What was the morbidity of these patients? How did the morbidity of these patients differ based on their race? Did we give more blood transfusions for patients that were, so they're looking at things in an equity lens, which is so important. So I feel that it's only taken my advocacy up a notch. And I'm super excited to be a part of their team. So that's where I am at.
That's great. Again, um, it's funny how God move us around on these boards. One of my favorite sayings is God says, "Did I not make my earth spacious for you to move about to and fro, to go be impactful, to go be impacted?" So one of the great things about my life and the things that I think about is I'm always thinking about how can I impact somebody in a positive way? How can I be kind? But I've found that me being kind and me being that being a part of my core value is I always get impacted. So, you know, even though your hospital is like you go in, I know for a fact that you go in guns blazing because you just have it, like, you know, and a lot of times when I'm singing your praises and this is all genuine. This is how I feel about you. And I always felt about this way about you from the day that I met you as a resident. I knew, and you know, you being placed in DC now. And it's funny, like I said earlier, that the links of our lives matter. How you came from Hershey and ended up in DC, how you was an advocate up in Hershey with so many different demographics and so many different walks of lives, and how that's probably geared you and prepared you for your time in DC. So a lot of times people, and I tell you guys on my podcast all the time, that don't resent the journey. Sometimes you might have to go to a rural area. Sometimes God will place you, or source, whatever you want to call them, will place you in places that you're not really comfortable in, and you're wondering why you're there. Mm-hmm. It's preparing you. Absolutely. So, you know, like, you know, now you telling us that you're in DC and how it's led to an even more fulfilling life for you, not only because of what you're impacting in the medical end of it, but that you're with your boys more, that you get to see them on the bus stop, that you do certain things. And as they're getting older, I'm sure they're going to start being in more activities in terms of sports and stuff. And as I've been following them grow, I remember Deuce being born. Literally, you know, now I look at him, he's damn near bigger than me, which ain't saying much. Yeah, I am short. Well, yeah, I'm saying, but
he's in the spelling bee. I mean, their mom doing the soccer thing. It's really amazing to be present and see them actually flourish and pour more into them. And you know, a lot of times we ran into the easy way out was like, oh, you can't sign up for this activity because who's going to get you there on Thursday at 3:00 in the afternoon? Now we're like, sign up for everything. We'll figure it out. We'll get you there. I can actually participate and be present and not be distracted on my phone. So I'm really enjoying it. And I'm grateful that there's an opportunity for me to still practice in a very meaningful way. You know, I'm not just settling for something that I don't want to do. I'm doing something that really, really sets my soul on fire.
And that's important. And, you know, I want guys, if you're watching this podcast, to know that sometimes you have to set yourself ablaze. That when you find something that you love, you have to keep pouring into that. A lot of times we don't pour into ourselves, especially healthcare professionals, because we're always the giver. So, you know, we have to find a balance so we can survive this field. We can survive lives and grow a life that's worthy of living. So a lot of times we have to pour into ourselves, and we don't do that. Like you just said, you pour into your family, which is in turn pouring into yourself. And which entails you going into work and giving them your best. Like I always say that I want to go to work and give them my best. And it was so much so that I remember over the years that I was struggling with whatever I was struggling with at any particular time. And I realized that my happiest places was at work because I didn't have to fight those demons there. And then one day and I'm gonna tell this story real quick. I was training a young lady to be a surgical tech, and I was telling her about habits. I said your habits matter. If you have good habits, then your good habits will save you in bad situations on the surgical field. Tonya, I'm telling you, it was like a lightning bolt in my mind. It said, "That's for all your life. Why are you giving your job the best of you when you could do equally as well for yourself out in the real world?" And that's when it started me out on my journey of having better habits, to not do things that was hindering me and that was hurting my heart. You know, I used to always continually break my own heart, but then I would get up and go to work and give them my heart, give them the best day when I wasn't even pouring into myself. So I always emphasize that let's pour into myself. And that actually goes into the question that one of my followers asked me. Like I said, I always try to get a question from the fans, from the stands at the end. Sometimes I do it at the beginning of the podcast, but I knew this podcast was going to be really important to me, and I wanted it to be mainly focused on what we wanted to talk about in terms of Black women's health. The question was, John, you mentioned in a previous episode that you hit a mental health wall at one point in your journey. As someone who's been through that, what advice would you give to people, both in and outside of healthcare, about the importance of maintaining good mental health and recognizing when it's time for you to pull back and reset? And you know, when I got this question, it was like amazing. It's funny because I don't really ever think I'm going to get questions. because the podcast ain't doing that well. You know, it's basically new. Only got 8 episodes. This is the 9th episode, I believe. So the question is very poignant. I was just talking about pouring into yourself. But for years and years and years and years, I didn't do that. You know, even when my mother died and my nephew passed away, I was traveling. I would stop briefly and then I would go on to the next step. Like even when my mother died, I ended up at Children's National at Washington Medical Center. You know, I think that's part of
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
network. I was working at
Happy.
Children's National. Yeah. And that was a blur. You know, I don't even remember working there. But it's funny because I left and they threw me a party because some things transcend what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I have this personality that transcends my emotions and my own mental health because I'm pretty much well loved everywhere I go, and maybe not initially when I get to a place because I have this I think this thing about me where I look like I'm cocky, and I always say that I hate that word because I'm not cocky. I think I'm confident. I'm a big believer in me, but I never poured into. I was more of a big believer in myself inside healthcare, and that's why I always say healthcare saved my life.
Mm.
But when I hit the wall mentally, um, it was bad, and it happened when I was working at Chop and stuff like that. But it was always something. It was always being led up to that, and it's because I didn't pay attention to what my body was telling me. I didn't take time to mourn or grieve my mother. I just moved right on. I didn't grieve my nephew. I didn't grieve all my friends. I remember I was scrubbed at Fox Chase, and my phone. Every time my phone ring now, if I'm at work, I get scared. Because if it continues to ring, I know something bad because I lost my oldest daughter mom. I was at Abington Scrub, the phone, and I could feel it ringing. And my daughter called through the hospital to tell me that her mother died, that she found her mother dead. I fall on the floor, but I didn't take time off to deal with that, right? Later on in life, I was at Fox Chase Scrub, my phone ringing off the hook. I come out, my best friend in life died suddenly. All of my childhood friends are dead. I have no childhood friends in terms of like who started with me. None of them. I've spent most of my life alone in terms of like what do I have to look back on in terms of can I call somebody and say, hey, you remember this? Mm-hmm. That leads to mental health issues. You know, no camaraderie, nobody to relate to. So, you know, my message to the world and my message to people in and outside of healthcare is you have to pour into yourself. And you mentioned earlier how passionate you are about your art and how you have that as an outlet to help you mentally. Mm-hmm. A lot of us in our field, now how many times have you walked down a hall and you've seen this empty space behind somebody's eyes in our field? We're giving our best to these patients in terms of what we can give at that particular time, yeah. But we're not giving to ourselves. Right. So my message is always the same way. You have to pour into yourself. Otherwise, you're doomed. Yeah. I nearly died. And this is not even an exaggeration. I nearly died because I didn't have the wherewithal to say, stop, go get help. Yeah. So what do you, and if you want to piggyback off of that.
No, like I said, social media is so ridiculous. Like people see just these little snapshots of your life and they're like, oh, they're flourishing. She's great. Everything is wonderful. But what they don't say, maybe these are the things that we do need to talk about so that we can normalize it, is like things get heavy. You know, like at one point, I have done all the things. I've taken medication for feeling depressed. That was a short time. But I had to ask myself, why am I this way? What are the environmental reasons and how do I fix that without just medicating it? And working through that meant therapy. Done therapy. Very important. Very helpful. I've done coaching specifically for me as a physician. Someone whose expertise is in how to coach a physician through the everyday life. Being a Black woman in healthcare comes with crazy obstacles, right? I mean, I could write an expose about some of the things that I've been through, especially in the past years. But I have taken leave of absences, months at a time, taken a step back to be able to center myself. And I don't know where, and perhaps Atu had a little bit to do with this, but where I've learned over the years to pour into myself and take a step back and recognize before I break. But thank God that I did, at every juncture. Thank God I did that short burst of depression following one of my babies, because I did have postpartum and I didn't really connect the dots. Thank God I decided to talk to a therapist or physician coach to help me navigate a very challenging time in the workspace. Thank God I took a summer off with a leave of absence to be able to center my mental health because of what I was going through. I will do whatever is required to not break, because if I break, the downstream domino effect on the people around me that are counting on me, not just my children, my extended family, my mother, my parents, there's so many people counting on me to keep it together. And so I will do whatever it takes to not break, and I will center myself and do those things. And it doesn't mean going to get my nails done, I got my hair done. Those things don't do it for me. I need time, peace, reflection, meditation, therapizing, whatever it is. I'm going to do those things. And for some people, it is being able to go on a trip or to go. For everybody, it's different. But you have
Right.
to recognize what that is that you need, and you need to do those things.
And that's powerful because I feel the same way. What I've learned over the years, and especially because, moving to San Diego and stuff like that out of the blue, because it felt like everything was designed for me to be here, because I was finally coming out of the dark, because I start pouring into myself. And like you said, I will do whatever it takes to keep myself healthy, because it's important, because of the things that I want to do and the things and the lives that I want to impact. Like, it's not just me. If I fall apart, if I eventually crash and fall and I die because I didn't take care of the things that was required of me to be taken care of, other lives are being affected. And even more than that, I'm important.
Yes.
How I feel about myself is important. It was times, and I remember people used to tell me when I was struggling so bad, and like you say, no one knew this about me because I'm John Bud. I'm the dominant one. I come in and I make shit happen. Like, I'm straight on the surgical field. I treat people good. I had this way about me. I walk into post offices and stuff like that, and the people behind the counter scream, "Here come our favorite customer," and all I do is just walk in. It's just certain things that I have, and people didn't know I was dying on the inside because I wasn't pouring into myself. So now that I pour into myself, I love to meditate. I love to read, and every now and then I'll put a video up about self-care and self-love, because I always want to give back. So and that in turn gives something to me. So everything that we talked about today in this podcast is so inspiring and so powerful, and I hope and I know, people like us, we break it down to its simplest form. If it touches one person, then we made a huge difference in the world. So I want to thank you for coming on. I hope that we can do this again. I know that your star is rising and rising and rising. So, I know that your time is very, very precious. And I respect that, because I remember when I initially asked you to come on to this podcast, this was months ago. This was in the winter, and you were in the process of moving.
I was probably
and that's why it took us so long.
I was out at that point. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to make it happen. I feel honored that you have me. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit. I feel like if one person if it impacts someone to want to be an OB-GYN and start that journey, or validates someone's dream to be an OB-GYN, great. If someone hears us and says, you know what, I need to not shun the healthcare system, but I need to actually find physicians that I trust and establish a rapport with and ask the right questions and have an advocate, then great. If it just opens their eyes to give, if they're a provider or nurse or staff, and they realize within themselves that they have not been given Black women grace because they're not considering that there are other circumstances that, shaping their perspective on their health, then great. Then we've accomplished more than what we set out to do with this episode.
Yeah, we did something wonderful, man. And like I say, every day we should wake up with the mindset that we want to impact lives, that we want to be positive, impactful people. And the way to do that is to speak into our spaces and the pour into not only ourselves, but into people who look like us. And then like I always say, I'm a humanist. I'm humanity over everything. It's important for me as a Black man to pour into myself, to my family, to Black women, Black people, and then humanity as a whole. I don't look at nobody and say, "Oh, I'm a hater." I don't do that, because I'm a humanist. And humanity should supersede anything else. So again, thank you, and I'm looking forward to. We're going to spin the block for sure. We're going to bring you on, and I love to have your husband on. I love to have you guys on as a team. I'm trying to grow this in a way where we're connecting all the dots on from healthcare to regular life because it's all in the same field. It's all the same bubble. So, God, again, thank you for coming on, guys. We're gonna keep it savvy, right? What we're gonna do next week. Episode 10 will be my final episode for season 1, and we're going to spin the block. We're going to go back down memory lane, as I always promise you, to tell you the stories about how John Bud became John Bud and where I'm at, where I was at, where I'm at today, and where I'm going. So we're going to spin the block, and we're going to talk about state property. We're going to talk about me being inside the penitentiary and how that affected my life immediately afterwards up until today. All right, let's keep it savvy. Tonya, let's spin the block soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.